Mandy from Finding Gorgeous back with the gorgeous Erin from Next Generation Wellness. We're here in the Wellness Hub, and today we have given you guys, if you haven't seen the last two videos where I have been chatting to this amazing lady who shared some incredible information with us on how to activate self-love, go back and watch them right now before you even watch this one. Today we are going to talk about life is busy. Hands up, life is busy, right? And we're all working hard on slowing down and taking more time for ourselves. But when it comes to food choices, we all can struggle sometimes with those quick choices, you know, the quick and easier choices. And originally, when we first caught up, you gave us this amazing framework on sort of trying to touch on these different foods that we need to touch on each day. If we can just get a bit of this and a bit of that, we kind of have that balance that we need to nourish our bodies. So make sure you go back and watch video one if you haven't watched that. But today I wanted to ask you, Erin, you know, how do we stop beating ourselves up? You know, hands up, ladies, inner critic comes out. I shouldn't have gone that easy choice. You know, I was tired, but then we beat ourselves up because we had that meal or we took that quick fix. And you sort of start to get in that pendulum swing of, oh my gosh, now I've got to overcompensate for having that bad thing and then getting tired again and having it again. You know, like, how can we do that better?
So I think emotions drive us. I think we need to honour that. And perhaps
emotional eater.
Absolutely. So
definitely.
The very first step is let's step into those moments. Let's step into curiosity over criticism first.
Oh, curiosity over criticism. I like that.
And that's easier said than done. I think it's really important to take a step into understanding how behaviours are formed, or certainly probably more beneficial to this conversation is how do we break the bad habits that we think we have and we want to get rid of.
Yeah.
So if we look at how it works from a neurological point of view, in order to change a behaviour, we need to first get the learning. So we need to use that neocortex of the brain, which allows us to learn something new to start a shift down.
So like I say to my teenagers, we need to connect the dots.
We need to connect the dots, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge in that very first step these days is that there is so much information. How do we take just a little chunk of that we can then start to put into a new behaviour?
Yes, because one week we're supposed to have this thing, the next minute, no, don't have butter, yes, get back on butter. Like,
definitely. Definitely, absolutely. So first step is the learning. We need to understand. And for me, I think the greatest in terms of physical and emotional health, the greatest learning can be around all the systems in the body and how they work and how do we nourish them. And if we're doing that, then we can understand why we're doing the next step.
Yes.
So that neocortex, we need the learning first. The second step is when our limbic brain comes into play, which is the part that helps us to remember the thing that we've learned.
Yes.
So we basically...
I might be missing that.
The emotional side.
Sometimes I feel like
we skip through it. We definitely. And it's interesting
sometimes.
to talk about why. So this limbic brain is where we have the ability to apply and personalise a certain thing that we've learned into something that then we get a feeling about it, which then helps to hardwire that into as a habit. And then the last step is we get the cerebellum into play, which then comes and stores this as our normal automatic behaviour. So it's where we must continually repeat it. So we need the learning, we need to bring the emotion and the experience into it, and then we need to repeat it. It sounds really simple, except we can fall off anywhere there. And the reason people fall short is basically because we're trying too many things at once.
Yes.
We're not isolating.
Oh, I'm good at that.
Yeah, we all are. And what's my friend doing? And what did I read today? And I'll swap with that. And that's when we're making choices from an emotional point of view.
Yeah, because we want the fix, right? Yeah. We want this to be fixed.
Out of discomfort.
I'd like it easy.
Yeah, definitely. So we look at that. We fall short because we don't actually isolate what is the behaviour that I want to shift. And it might be one. It might be as simple as having breakfast, rather than if we go and I know I'm guilty, but if I'm sitting with someone and it's like, all right, well, we need to do this for breakfast, we need to do this for lunch, we need to do this for snacks. It's too much.
Yes.
One thing at a time, one simple little behaviour. And then bringing into understanding that 95% of our day is on autopilot. So this 5% that we get to work with to shift behaviours isn't much.
You're so right. And just let that soak in for a second. 95% of what you're going to do today you did yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. I remember when I first started getting my head around this, it just is a little bit mind-blowing. and we're all looking for a happier existence. You know, we're all looking to activate more self-love. That's why you're listening today. So if we have to start nailing these conscious choices, don't we? We have to start, like you say, just start doing breakfast, and then that becomes a habit, and then we start doing another habit, and then on top of, you know, we have all these new habits that are unconscious that start driving us in a different direction to have a better life. Yeah.
And if we just look at the typical diet scenario of someone going on diet, that's what we're good for a couple of weeks, but because we're changing so many things, we can't maintain that.
So one thing at a time.
One thing at a time.
I like that.
One thing at a time, and then this, to make sure that we maintain focus. What I tend to do is think of it as, where do I create little triggers through my day to bring in mindfulness? So it's really important that we continually bring the brain back to what it is that we're changing. So it might be post-it notes. If it's food related, on the fridge and on the pantry, on your desk. It might be it can be anywhere, in the car, it could be anywhere at all where we want to change any behaviour, we need to maintain focus on it. So it can be a post-it note. So we need to isolate the behaviour and then keep something there as a focus point to bring us back to it. Then we probably need to step into that space of when we do the thing that we didn't want to do. So if we look at self-sabotage, which is typically just doing the thing that we know that we don't want to do, we want a different outcome.
So let's maybe use coffee as an example.
Yeah.
So we've had one coffee in the morning. We've said, that's it. My new habit is that I have one in the morning after I've had some breakfast.
Yes.
I'm not going to have any more during the day. That's it. I'm having one coffee.
Yep.
So what happens when we reach for coffee too?
Yes. And if I look at from a personal point of view, it's easy to understand. So first of all, if I could say, okay, I had my one coffee in the morning, I can say I know that I don't want the extra coffee because it puts pressure on my liver and my adrenal system, and neither of them we want pressure on. So I know from a learning point of view that's there. However, if I go to mid-afternoon and step into it and I'm reaching for it, now sometimes this is the interesting part, and it happened to me a couple of weeks ago, I was doing something that was quite scary for me, organising something I really didn't want to do it. So it was a procrastination type thing. So I went and I thought, this will make me feel good, because it does.
Because you were looking to feel
good. Yeah. And I know that morning coffee makes me feel good. Now I know an afternoon coffee for me doesn't actually even taste good. I don't like the feeling of it. It gives me a headache.
But you're looking for that morning feeling.
Looking for the morning. So
because we are always looking for a feeling.
Absolutely. And that's where that middle step, that limbic brains come into play, and it's saying, well, I remember that you felt that way, and this is what the feeling was, so we'll go for that. So the best way, because often we do it, so this is around what happens when we've actually made the second cup of coffee and we're having it. Now in that moment, if again we can bring in mindfulness work, that we sit there and we taste that coffee. Now, so I know, if I'm aware of it, that I get the headache, that it doesn't taste good. What does it actually taste like? So it's this real, we're in that present moment feeling what it feels like, and then tasting what it is. So we're getting all of that limbic experiential part on board, but it's sending us into, actually, I don't like this feeling very much. So then we are more likely the next time that happens to say, well, I know that that's how it feels and that's what it tastes like. I'm less likely to do it. If we do it again though, so it's stepping back into this self-compassion.
Because I know, guilty, in the past, I used to drink, I'm just going to say this out loud to the whole world, I used to drink Coca-Cola.
When we know better, we do better.
Yeah, and I knew in the afternoons when I was having it that I was having it purely because I was tired, so it was a really good sugar hit and caffeine hit. But I would still have it, and sometimes it didn't even taste good, and I literally would have it almost to appease my habit. Like it was like I wasn't actually even enjoying it. It was just because I was so in the habit that I was now doing it out of habit rather than anything else.
Yep. And so we want the better feeling.
Yes.
So we know, even if I've got to that point with the coffee and say, right, well, I know that this doesn't feel like that. What I would probably do is put a post-it note on there to say, you know, it might be just a smiley face, to remind me I need to think about how I'm going to feel. Now, if the thing that I was trying to get away with, the work that I didn't want to do, was still sitting there, then I know I have a list of a few things that are under 5 minutes that make me feel better. So I just get up, go outside, and get that feeling.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Boom. It's having the go-to things. Yes. And that for me has been a life changer. So having things that when you go to reach for the second coffee, for example, or the can of Coke. And if you're still drinking Coke, that is okay, but life is way better without it. But having those go-to things was a game changer, because I felt like I was taking so much away from myself, and therefore it was not nourishing, because it just felt like more and more lack, more and more taking away.
Yes.
So then having those things, those processes, those rituals that work for you, and this is why, ladies, you have to try lots of things, because you need to find things that can help you, that make you feel like you got that. In the morning with that coffee, in the afternoon that might be shutting your eyes down and listening to your favourite tune from In the Sun, or
and stepping into in that self-compassion moment, when what that's about is stepping in and saying, it's the common humanity part. So Kristen Neff is very good at self-compassion, which is amazing to look up, and she basically says, if we step into common humanity rather than isolation of, I'm a terrible person, I've done this, if we come into common humanity and say, well, I understand, and kind words, I understand, Erin, that I understand why you did that. You did that because you're afraid of what you're doing, that you might make a mistake. I know that I have a fear of failure. So I know that, and it was very understandable that you went for something that feels good. Perhaps next time we can go to the list of the things. This is all happening. We don't have to say it out loud, but it's all happening.
If you say it out loud, people around you, they do think you're odd.
They do.
But that's
okay.
okay.
That's the one time you're allowed to talk in your head. And keeping those lists of things, the under 5 minute things.
You've got to have those go-to things. It's so important. Ladies, if you've got go-to things that you're using, drop them down. We'd love to hear. Let's share with each other what we're using to help get past those habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to create those before we're in the moment, because when we're in the moment, we're offline and we don't know what we're trying.
Because we're in automatic pilot, right?
Yeah. And playing with, when we look at those self-sabotaging behaviours, we know there's conscious ones and unconscious ones. So we know the coffee would be a very conscious choice that I would have made in that moment, and I still did it. But the unconscious ones are the ones that are almost, we learn them from a very young age. So as an example, I know that I really, in the past, have liked to control things like crazy. And
I've got no idea what you mean. No idea at all.
Control freaks. And I know that that's happened for me in the past because I had this fear of failure. So if I felt that and it was a misunderstanding really, but if I could control as much as I needed to, then there would be less fear of that, or less chance of that. So we have to look at what actually might be this unconscious driver that's pushing us towards eating the thing, doing the thing that we want to change so much. So it's
and like you say, being really compassionate to ourselves when we recognise that we are doing it. And my beautiful Yoda, Michelle Kanan, she's an incredible woman, life changer, and she always says to me, nothing messes you up quite like being a kid.
Yes,
so right. we all need to be kind to ourselves, that we've taken that stuff, which creates these habits like afternoon coffees, and for me, eating whole packets of biscuits and, things like that.
Yes. We go into critical.
We've got to be kind to ourselves. The second that we activate that inner critic and start, well, look at you having the coffee you said you weren't going to have, then we just start spiralling into a negative, and that is never going to help us to overcome that habit.
Never.
Or form a new habit.
There's lots of research around that. We're less likely to change with criticism rather than self-compassion. So it's a really important aspect. And then it still comes back to this, what's happening, what is our relationship with if it's around food habits, around our body? Are we falling into that guilt, shame space that then leads us to that quick fix that then we know that we feel better with, even if it's the sugary packet food? Or are we staying in this space of, actually, my body's a remarkable vessel and it will get rid of this extra stuff if it's in that balance of 70-30. So have I actually fallen off today? No. The rest of the day's been fabulous.
Yeah. And look at my week.
Yes. And
so this is my first afternoon coffee. You know what? I'm not going to sweat it.
No. And it's going to be great, and then our next behaviour's better. But if we stay stuck on focusing on the one thing that we didn't do like we wanted to.
Well, because we put those lenses on.
Absolutely.
Right? We put on the critical lens. We start, the inner critic chatter comes, we put that lens on, and that's how we see life. We start to see ourselves through that critical lens, which, is pretty much a sure thing that we're not going to succeed. Hysterically, because we're ultimately going towards what we're trying to avoid.
Definitely. And the other challenge we are faced with outside of behaviour change too, which is very relevant today, is the addictive qualities in food. So whether that's sugars and
so they actually So, ladies, anyone that hasn't been to any of my workshops, you may not understand the framework that I use, but I know many of you listening have. And, I'm always talking about how the world sells us this ideal self and wants us to go in pursuit of that, right?
Yep.
And so we think that we need to be perfect. We think we need to drink the green smoothies. We need to look a certain way. We need, and that's this ideal self that we're going for. And really, we're being set up to go against who we are. Now, so what you're telling me is there is things in foods that help us to activate our inner critic and keep us in these habits so that we continue to go in pursuit of this ideal self.
Absolutely. There's a couple of different ways it happens. If we look at additives and preservatives and our artificial sugars, works a couple of ways. If we look at even the way it affects our bacteria, so we know that those acidic style foods, which is what a lot of Australians are eating on a regular basis, out of that 70-30 balance. Yeah. When we're doing that, then we're actually feeding more those pathogenic bacteria. And if we know now that our emotional well-being is very much founded in how that bacteria balance sits and how the neurotransmitters are communicating. So we're feeding the wrong ones firstly. Yes. So that can lead to more that negative feeling, which then we go for food.
So we're more likely, we eat that thing, it makes us more likely to want that thing again, which also makes us more likely to be nasty to ourselves.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research saying people that are craving sugar, they're actually, it's the bacteria, the pathogenic style ones craving it. So there's that side of it, and then there's the mesolimbic dopamine system, which is more a chemical pathway that says the moment we have, say, dessert after dinner, and it feels good, the brain basically says, remember everything about this. Remember the smell, what you just did.
I want more of this.
And then that happens. So the receptors become a little bit resistant to it, and we need more of the thing. So it can be a chemical need that's actually driving it. And we're so hard on ourselves around, well, I have no willpower to do that. And sometimes it's more than that. And we have to acknowledge, even as a personality type, whether we're more addictive, whether we sit on the addictive end of the spiral,
addictive personality
spectrum, or the other. And what foods am I addicted to? And so again, it's coming back to that curious space of, how do I operate? Forget about everyone else. How do I operate? I know that if I go and buy the block of chocolate, I know that I will eat the whole thing, given. So if I'm buying it, I need to be okay with that. And sometimes I do. Or if for some people it might be some healthy foods, nuts or cheeses that they overeat, but then they still get cranky at themselves. So it's honouring where I sit on this spectrum, and then perhaps not having the foods. And we know a couple of weeks without those addictive, additive-filled foods and sugar-filled foods, our bliss points come back so we can actually taste real food. And also that chemical desire starts to wane. But depending on where we sit on the spectrum, for some people, reintroducing one of those foods once will put them back to where they were. For some people, they can reintroduce it and they're fine. So it's knowing us.
So here we are. Let me just take a snapshot of this. Here we are as women being sold this ideal of what we should look like. We're being given all these different foods that feed our chemical makeup. We're a high-tech human body that needs all of these different things to in balance to function correctly, and yet we're comparing ourselves to, well, she does that better. She seems to buy the block of chocolate and only have 2 small pieces.
Sometimes we're not very honest about that anyway.
I think there's something wrong with her. But anyway. But isn't it? It's kind of ludicrous when you sit back and actually go, this is what we are doing to ourselves. And then, for me, I know you ladies are doing this. This is why I'm here chatting to Erin, is that we get the shame stick out and we start beating ourselves because I just had the whole block of chocolate.
Yep. Yeah.
And not only do I physically feel ill from having that, but I'm now going to beat myself with the proverbial shame stick because I know that I know better than to do that.
Yes.
And so it continues around and around because the additives in the chocolate make me want more. So it's not my fault.
Yes. So it's coming back. And again, there's lots in that to take. So it is as simple as understanding probably additives, and we'll put a link to, I have a list of the additives, the worst of the worst to avoid in our food.
Brilliant. So we're going to put that down here?
Yes.
Somewhere?
And so we can look at that and say, okay, well, I'm actually seeing some of these symptoms, and in which foods are these additives in that cause some of these symptoms? So we can start to cut that out to make ourselves feel better too. and then get our bliss points back so it tastes better. So we can sort of reduce the effect of that chemical need. And then we step into just being aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Is there an underlying sort of frightened part of us that's pushing our decisions?
Because of the belief systems that drive all of our choices, right?
So it's both sides. We have to look at the additive toxic foods that are driving us.
Yep.
And then once we can reduce that a little bit so that we're not really driven by that, then it's worth paying attention to all those little underlying things, and then we can expand, get better and better and better. And this isn't about food, isn't around perfection. We don't want to go down that path because it's just this 70-30 thing. We're reducing it as much. It's not about if I have that one thing, I've ruined it all.
And I love the way you say if we know better, we do better. And I think, ladies, that chatting to Erin is blowing my mind with information. I know that you've all got lots of questions, so please post your questions down here, and Erin will come in and answer. Have a chat, reach out to Erin, because, life is too darn short, isn't it, for us to be stuck, be stuck in a kind of a crazy and in a cycle. And I think once you become aware, and for those ladies listening right now that are done, I've been there. I've been done. Those moments where you are so done living the life you're living, feeling the way you're feeling, that is a really powerful time. So be done with that so that you can make small changes to be able to have that big change that you're looking for in life.
And I can relate. A friend not long ago came and opened the pantry, and all my things are in jars. But this has been a 10-year process. It's also the work that I do, so of course it's important to me. I also know what it's like to not have physical health and to be in a wheelchair and all those things. So the nail's sharp enough for me to change that.
Boom.
Yeah, so
that's the thing.
We have to honour that.
We do. And, I've said to many a person, if you're not making the changes because it's not hurting enough yet. And absolutely. Once that pin hurts enough, you will get off of it. You'll get up and get off of it.
And one step.
That is amazing. Another amazing video from the beautiful Erin today. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge and passion. And ladies, listen to this over and over. Go back and watch some of the other videos as well. Erin is just a wealth of knowledge, and knowledge really is power. And the more of that we have, the more conscious we can make choices, and the more we can activate our inner cheerleader, drown out that inner critic, and truly love being who we are. Love it. Thank you so much, ladies. Bye.